All right. Well, hey, we are launching a new series today called Prepare Him Room. Prepare Him Room. And the whole idea is how do we create space for God in the middle of all the clutter? How do we give God a voice in the middle of all the noise? And I'm actually pretty excited about what we're talking about today, but I'm a little nervous too. We'll get into that in a second. Before we hop into the teaching, I want to highlight something for you. December 29th, which is the last Sunday of the year. So there's this weird Sunday between Christmas and the New Year every year. And if you have ever been part of a church team, volunteer team, staff, you know it's just a really weird Sunday. It's always the least attended service of the year by a significant margin. The team is exhaustified from the Christmas holidays and all the preparation of life in church. And it's the hardest to get volunteers for. And we've already started to hear that amongst the teams, like, hey, it's really hard to get people on this team or that team and kids and all that kind of stuff for December 29th. So here's what we decided to do. Instead of trying to sail against the wind, maybe we just need to do something a little different. We talked about it as a team. Here's what we're going to do. We're still going to have church that day, but church is going to leave the building. Okay, so we're going to have church online. We're going to create a short video online for you. And here's what we encourage you to do. We want you to take a moment, and part of that day is to take church, whatever will recharge you, refuel you as a family, as a group of friends, to go into 2020 not kind of limping along, but excited and recharged for the new year. And also as a gift to those of you guys who are on Dream Team, you volunteer at some level, we want to just give you a gift and say, take a Sunday and recharge. Thank you for the 51 Sundays every year where you give and give and give. Our first ones to show up, last ones to leave. We want to give you a Sunday and just say, enjoy it. Enjoy it. So that's what's happening December 29th. Again, we want to just reform different traditions. We want to go into 2020 excited. The first few weeks of 2020, actually, we are going to share our 2020 vision, which is really exciting for us, so you're not going to want to miss that. And actually, what's so weird is it weird to anybody else that we're about to go into 2020? Is that bizarre? Like, I felt like we'd have, like, robot dogs and, like, flying cars, like the Jetsons, right? Like, you press a ramen button, and it just creates food out of some soy or whatever. It just creates it like Star Trek. But anyways, it's kind of weird. We have a Cybertruck, I guess. That's close enough to a flying car. But yes, so that's what's happening, and we're going to announce it over and over again. I'm sure people are still going to forget and show up on December 29th. We'll have a sign up there on the doors to remind you. And if you do, just remember this moment. We told you we're going to remind you, and I told you might forget. And when you come here, just go, oh, well, I got a saying that we're supposed to go to Snooze and grab brunch or something. So, all right. Hey, hopping into this week's teaching and this series, this season is just really full. I think that's kind of the whole point of this series is that this season is so full. And actually, it's why we're not doing a Dream Team Christmas thing. We're doing a Dream Team Christmas party or a holiday party or a thank you party after the new year because it's just too full to do it right now. We don't want to get lost in the middle of everything. And so this season is full of things like decorating and cookies and treats, and for us in SoCal, fake snow. Right? So you go to all these events, it's like, snow, it's bubbles, or it's foam, right? There's parties, and there's parties, and there's parties, and there's iconic movies. Some of you guys are more old school. Some of you guys like Elf, and Elf is kind of old school now. It's like, no, it's still, how many of you guys have already watched Elf? Anybody? Yeah, our house has. Parts of it. It's been in the background. But this season can also be full of pressure and stuff and busyness and anxiety. And if we aren't careful, we can actually leave this season with more stress and less joy. We can leave this season with more debt and less peace. We can go into 2020 actually with more pounds. Some of us are already there. Had some conversation. Some of you guys are like, I've already gained 3 pounds. I haven't had a Christmas cookie yet. But we can leave this season with more pounds and less passion for God. And what's wild is that in a season that should be marked with peace, it's so marked with hurry. And so we're going to take the next few weeks and talk about that, how we navigate the holidays and keep Christ at the center. How do we keep Christ from getting elbowed out? And that's kind of the whole point of the graphic for the series is in the middle of where the manger should be, where Christ should be, is just stuff, pop culture stuff. And how do we honor God in the midst of all the noise? So next week we're going to talk about time management, how do we utilize our time? Because life is really just time, how we utilize our time. And then the week after that, we're going to talk about control. The most powerful thing maybe in our lives is our ability to surrender, not our ability to control. And so this week, though, we're going to talk about stuff. The stuff that we accumulate, the stuff that we desire, the stuff that fills our garages where cars actually are. Garages are actually designed for cars. I don't know if you realize this. Originally, they were designed for cars, not for stuff. And the stuff that we accumulate, the stuff that we want, the stuff that we have, the stuff that we need in Marie Kondo, which is apparently now a verb, the stuff that just weighs us down. And if we're not careful, the stuff that can become an anchor on our souls. And so here's the thing is I really feel like I'm going to step on some toes this morning. And you just got to know it's because I love you. Honestly, it really is. It's not like the dad going, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. It's not that. Look, your life is too short. Your life is too valuable. The grace of God is too good for us to spend time wasting it on things that don't matter. So today I'm going to step on some toes. And if that's okay with you, say it's cool. It's cool. All right. Thank you. All right. And if I do step on toes and you're frustrated, you can always email me at takataka@idon'tcare.com. Just kidding. We'll talk it through. I do care. I care about you. All right. So here's a big idea for us today. It's better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. It's better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. You're going to hear us say this 100 times this morning. Most likely hear me say it. It's better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. Culture tells us that more is better. New is better. If one is good, well, then two's got to be at least twice as good. Three, even better, right? One car, awesome. Two cars, even better. One motorcycle. I remember once I used to be really big into motorcycles. Before my brother started working in the ER, I was like, okay, I don't think you're supposed to show me those pictures. But when we're talking to a friend of mine, he goes, I think everybody should have 5 motorcycles. And that was like, that's the least he could reduce it to. And at first I'm like, you're crazy. And the more he started talking, I'm going, you actually have a good point. It's like you need a cafe racer, you need a cruiser, you need a power cruiser for the times you want to cruise faster, you need a sport bike, and you need a wind-up bike. If you don't know what a wind-up bike is, it's one of those guys like that are older drive, like a lazy boy with wheels. You guys ever seen these, right? Sometimes they're trikes or that kind of thing. They're called wind-up bikes because no matter what you ride today, you'll wind up on one of those eventually. So there's 5 bikes that everybody needs. And I'm like, yeah, if 1 is good, 2 is better, 5 is at least 5, right? So I was working my way towards that, and then we started planning a church. But when I was a kid, I had the same mentality. And so there's this thing back in the day called Saturday morning cartoons. You guys remember these? Back when cartoons were good. Back when you knew what time shows came on. Remember that? It's like, so I used to get up early every Saturday morning, which is a big deal for me because I'm not a morning person. And I would wake up at 5:15 because the first cartoon started at 5:30. You guys remember these days? Some of you guys are reliving like your childhood memories back in the 80s when you had like USA Cartoon Express and Hanna-Barbera, all this kind of stuff. So I'd watch like the colored lines, and then it would turn into like fireworks, the American flag, and then a jet would take off, and then we'd start with Pound Puppies. That was the first cartoon that would happen. And so I knew when the flags were starting to go, I got about 30 seconds. I would go to the kitchen, and I kid you not, as a young kid in the 80s, I would get a can of green beans. I loved green beans. Like not good ones. Like it just said green beans on the can, right? And it wasn't bougie, it just can't. And so I would start with 1 can of green beans, kill them. And after the weeks went on, I actually moved up to 2 cans of green beans. I was like double fisting green beans. And it got to 3 cans. And an interesting thing happened at 3 cans. There was this pivotal moment, I'll never forget it, because my life will be forever changed. My body rejected the 3rd can of green beans. And I projectile vomited. Some of you guys are not hungry for lunch anymore. Projectile vomited over the Commodore 64. Okay, so it was a big deal. It was my dad's work computer. It was my gaming computer, and it was a bad deal. To this day, I can't have green beans unless they're crispy because it reminds me of this moment in the 80s. Right, so I thought, man, if 1 can of green beans was good, 2 cans is better. But actually, 1 can of green beans was good, arguably good. 2nd can of green beans, 3rd can, there was a point where actually the more made me sicker. You see where we're going with this? More made me sicker. It's a true story. So Solomon says this actually in Ecclesiastes. He says, better is one handful with tranquility. Better is one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and a chasing after the wind. In other words, better to have one handful with peace, with joy, with contentment, than two handfuls with anxiety, two handfuls with tension, two handful with stress in relationships, two handfuls that pull you into a personality and a character that you don't want to be, that you don't like the person that has two handfuls because of who you become. Better to have one handful with joy and peace than two handfuls with irritability and a lack of sleep. Do we believe that? See, it's better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does, because again, your life is too valuable. Your life is too valuable. Your calling, God's calling on your life is too great. And God is too good to waste your life on stuff that doesn't matter. Your life is too valuable. Your calling is too great, and God is too good to spend your life on things that don't matter, on things that won't last. So Jesus gives this warning in Luke chapter 12. We're kind of in the series of, before we took a pause for preparing room, we're going through the Gospel of Luke. So in Luke, Jesus says this. He says, then he said to them, his followers, watch out, exclamation point, watch out. Be on your guard. Against what? Against war? Against those people? Against people who believe different things than you? What does he say? Watch out, be on your guard. Against all kinds of greed. Against all kind of greed. Because if you don't watch out, if you're not alert, if you're not careful, if you're not watching for them, not you, but if you're watching for this, you'll actually miss it. That greed will sneak in. We didn't expect it. Greed will infiltrate the camp if you aren't watching out. Then he says, life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. In other words, you are not what you have. You are not what you drive. You are not what you own. You are not what you wear. Your life is far bigger than that. Far separate than that. And the lie behind all of this is that what you don't have is what you need. The lie is what you don't have is what you need to be happy. What you don't have is what you need to be significant. What you don't have is what you need to be fulfilled. What you don't have is what you need to be complete, right? You're looking at that thing, whatever that thing is for you, and all of us have different things, right? One person, the thing that really gets their heart to go this way, you look at it and go, that's stupid. But you have the thing you want too, right? So, what is the stuff that is robbing you from the life you want? What if the stuff that you have, what if the stuff you currently have is actually robbing you from the life you want? And what if the stuff you desire, want, is keeping you from what God desires for you? I want us to talk about this as we sit between Black Friday and Cyber Monday, right? The biggest consumer season of the year. I want us to think about three things about one handful living. That this is better than this. And this goes against our culture. This goes against our human nature. So the first thing I want us to talk about is throw out. Throw out. Look, some of us need to get rid of a bunch of stuff in our closets, our garage, our storage units, our car trunk, right? Your car floorboards. Like some of us need to get rid of a lot of stuff. Actually, as I was prepping for this, I'm going, I need to do this. Bad, right? And here's the thing. This is more than just decluttering. This is about de-owning, right? It's a big difference. This is not decluttering. This is de-owning. Owning less is better than organizing more. Owning less is better than organizing more. So there's this guy in the New Testament. He was called the rich young ruler. We don't even know what his name is. Just the rich young ruler. Trust fund kid, right? And he asked Jesus, what do I do as next? Because I've followed all the rules. I do the things. I serve. I give. And Jesus goes, I think your stuff owns you. He didn't say that, but he's about to say something that says that. And then he says, you need to sell everything. He recognized that this guy's stuff owned him. That the stuff that he had was actually robbing him from the future God wanted him to have. So he goes, sell everything you have. Give it away. And you'll have treasures in heaven. You'll have less of what doesn't matter. You'll have more of what does. And what does the young ruler do? Yes, thank you. This is what I've been missing. No. Here's what he does. Luke 18:23, he said this. When he heard this, he became very sad. When he heard this, he became very sad because he was a man of great wealth. In other words, when he heard this, he was really sad because he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do that. And actually, Jesus goes on to say, we don't have time to go into, but Jesus actually goes on to say that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. But then, he says one of my favorite scriptures in all of the Bible, Luke 18:27, he says, but what is impossible with man is possible with God. He's saying the vast majority of people who put their hope and their dependence and their identity in their stuff, they won't give that up like this rich young ruler to follow God. But God can change a heart. And there's so many people in this room that's our story. That we used to be caught up in stuff. And now we're caught up in God. We use our stuff to build his kingdom. So here's a few questions for you. Why do we pursue junk expecting it to be powerful? Why do we pursue junk expecting it to be powerful? Because it's not wrong to have stuff. It's wrong for the stuff to own you. It's wrong to think that the stuff will bring you what you want in life. It's wrong to think that the stuff will bring you hope and peace and joy and meaning and purpose and significance. Why do we pursue things that will rust, decay, things that are so obviously temporary, and think that it'll fulfill the eternal part of us? Like if I were to say, hey, I have this car that's 100 years old. I drove it here today. You'd be like, no way, that's crazy. Because that should be rusted out by now. We intuitively know that stuff doesn't last. Yet we somehow think that our spiritual souls can be fulfilled with a material thing. That our eternal souls can be filled with a temporary thing. The void is spiritual. It can only be filled by God. So, why do we hold on to so much stuff? Why can't we throw it out? This is a question I had to ask myself this week. Like, why? Like, Natalie has no problem throwing things out. She's like an emotionally disconnected with stuff, right? I'm just like, but what if I need that sock later? I know I'll one day find the matching sock, you know? Why can't we throw stuff out? Most of us. Some of us, you're like, I have no problem. I know. Your spouse knows, your friends know, but most of us have a hard time throwing things out. Why? Why? Like, why can't you get rid of those jeans? You know what I'm talking about? You haven't worn them. They're not coming back. It's over. You know what I mean? Just, you're not going to paint your house in the next while. Like, there's not a big project you need to keep them around. Why do you keep those old shoes? Like, why? VHS tapes? Really? Like, what? Mismatched Tupperware? You're not going to find the lid to that thing. All right? It's just not going to happen. No one's going to come over and go, I've had this lid. I think it's yours. And it's all going to come together. Keys? You're not going to figure out what door that opens. All right? You're just going to have a bag of keys. And it's fine. It's probably from 4 houses ago. You know what I mean? Baby teeth? Okay, this one's a little close to home. So a person that I live with, she does this weird thing, which, no name, not calling anybody out, but she keeps our children's teeth like a psycho. All right? And I don't understand it. But so she keeps her teeth. You know what I keep? USB cords. I thought about that. I probably have 40 micro USB cords in the house. I could charge all your devices. Like, I don't know why. I need to get rid of them. Right? Why can't we get rid of them? Why can't we get rid of them? I think there's 2 big reasons. One, fear. Fear. What if we need it in the future? Right? What if I need this in the future? You never know. I know some of your personalities, so I know some of you guys are like this. Okay, look, that random thing in the garage, I might need it sometime. I haven't needed it for 15 years, but I might need it in the future. Or what if the kids need it, right? What if my kids, like 25 years from now, need a micro USB cable? You're going to be really glad I kept 40 of them, right? What if my friends need it? I don't want to waste it. And then you know what? Something shifted in me. I think that's a fear-based mentality. I think instead we need to live by faith. In other words, here's how that plays out. Is that I believe that if I get rid of this, if I haven't used this thing in 6 months or a year, come on. Then if I need this in the future, God will provide the opportunity to get another one. So why not use this opportunity to bless someone with it today? Next week, I'm going to have a pile of USB cords. And if you need one, take 10. Just kidding. But I'm going to have the opportunity to bless someone with it today. So fear. Number 2, sentiment. Sentiment. I keep this note because a friend wrote it to me in 2nd grade. I'll never forget it. I have sermon notes that I took when I was in high school youth group as a high schooler, right? Not as a leader. Why? I don't know. There's notes from my friends that wrote me notes during youth groups who weren't paying attention, right? And I have a box of them. Why? I don't know. I haven't looked at them in 15 years, right? Why do you keep that shirt from that marathon, right? You don't wear it. Why do you keep that? This is the first diaper my kid ever pooped in and have it framed. Some of us need to Marie Kondo some stuff, right? What Marie Kondo actually teaches, it's a little weird at first, but actually it makes a lot of sense. She'll teach that be thankful for the meaning of that season. Thankful for the t-shirt that had a lot of significance. Thankful for this mug that my friend bought me a long time ago. Thank you for my daughter that gave us teeth we can keep in bags. Thank you for this diaper that caught poop. And then it's time to thank it. It was meaningful. It was significant for a season. And then move on. Move on. Give the thing away. Give the shirt away. That book that was meaningful to you in that season, give it away. That old smartphone that's sitting in your drawer, give it away, right? Just give it away or sell it if you need the money or something, right? But I'm not going to let this stuff weigh me down. Why? Because it's better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does, right? So the first one is throw out. Throw out. Some of us need to really take that to heart. Okay, like take this afternoon, go through your garage, go through the drawers I'm talking about, the cabinets I'm talking about. You've been meaning to do it. You don't need 46 coffee cups. Like you just need to start doing something. Just throw it out. And what you'll find is actually it's taking up space in your heart. You'll feel cleaner, actually. Second thing, so first one is throw out. Second, buy less. Buy less. Don't get rid of all this stuff and go, oh my gosh, I have all this room now in my cabinets. I need to get some coffee cups. Like, you don't need to do that. Buy less. You may say, talking too late, man. Black Friday. I got 6 TVs. Can I interest you in a TV? 62% of people say they actually shop to cheer themselves up. Retail therapy, right? They shop to cheer themselves up. I think our 12-year-old is one of those people, right? It shops to cheer themselves up. Maybe something new will shake up the boredom in my life. Well, David says this. The psalmist David, King David, says this in Psalm 119. It's a really interesting way he phrases things. Cause my heart to bow before your words of wisdom. Cause my heart to bow before your words of wisdom and not to the wealth of this world. Help me turn my eyes away from illusions so that I can pursue only that which is true. A couple interesting thoughts with this, because we can camp on this for hours. We won't. You'll get lunch. Cause my heart to bow before, in other words, my heart doesn't naturally bow before God. My heart naturally bows before the wealth of this world. God, would you help me? I don't know how to do this. Would you help me cause my heart to bow before you? So I need to pray this often. To my own devices, I'm selfish, I'm materialistic. That's me. So I got to constantly go, God, I don't want to pray today. Would you help me want to? Cause my heart to bow before you. Cause my heart to submit to you. And then help my eyes to turn away from the illusions. Cause my eyes to turn away from the illusions. I think of like the middle schooler who's glued to his phone or the iPad. And you're like, hey, I'm leaving. And for 5 years. And they're just like, right? And it's like, help me turn my eyes away. And they'll eventually, like, our kids will look back and go, welcome back, right? Help my eyes to turn away from illusions. So why? So I can pursue that which is true. My prayer, our prayer, is that we live lives so focused on God that we don't need to buy things to feel better about myself or to define me. So as a family, we actually prioritize buying less things and focus more on experiences. And so just for funsies, I texted our daughters this week and just said, you're laughing at funsies. I texted our kids and said, tell me some of your favorite childhood memories. Now that you're old, middle, and high schoolers, tell me some things that you remember, favorite memories from when you were, a kid. Now that you're an adult. And they said these, M&Ms with their faces on it. Every Valentine's Day, we would get them M&Ms with their faces on it, crudely, painted, I didn't hand paint that, are you kidding me? With the M&M.com, and not the wrapper, but the candy. And you can actually upload a photo and have it printed on, and they thought it was just the coolest thing that your face was on candy, and it was just cool. So that was one of their favorite memories. Going to the Discovery Center, which is kind of like the Discovery Cube, but not as cool. It was for them, it was an experiential thing with the family, and they'd get to play with things. They'd touch that big thing that makes their hair go up. I don't know, you know what I mean? For the gram, or for the Zanga back then. And so they loved that kind of stuff. They loved it when we had a big 14-foot trampoline in the backyard, because we had these things called yards in the Midwest. And it's like large patches of grass. I don't know if you've seen them before. But there was this trampoline, and we had our two kids and two foster kids, and they would sit on the trampoline. Their favorite thing was the weirdest thing. I would be underneath the trampoline on my back, and I would kick the trampoline, and they'd go flying. Like if child services ever came to be like, you can't do that. It's okay, they never caught us. That was one of their favorite things. They loved making homemade ice cream. They talked about that. They talked about how they would do this, it was this French thing for like bakery. I don't know, I don't speak French. I took honors French 1, but I don't remember how to say it. They had this pop-up bakery where they would make baked goods, you could call them that people would actually pay money for because they felt bad for them. So that was one of the favorite memories. Do you know what they didn't mention, which I thought was very interesting? Was they didn't mention like how nice our car was. We have some pretty nice cars. They didn't mention how big the TV was. They didn't say, man, 55-inch, man. Plasma. I remember that. Never forget it. So crisp. When you got the 7.2 surround sound system, I mean, Dora was so alive. Like I felt like I was there with Boots, you know? They never talk about the TV. They never talk about my brand of jeans. Like, man, the stitching on the butt of your jeans, it was just life-changing. They never talked about that. They actually didn't talk about anything expensive. Less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. Less of what doesn't matter, more of what does. So 1, throw out. 2, buy less. 3, give more. Give more. I'm like, I contemplate, how am I going to say this without sounding self-serving, right? But all I know is this. Culture leads us towards affluenza, a sickness of the heart that needs retail therapy, right? This affluenza, the only antidote to, sorry, I thought the only antidote is more cowbell. The only antidote to affluenza is generosity. That's it. That's it. And here's the thing, is I don't want anything from you. I want something for you. And for those of us in the room that have shifted from get to give, those of us that have shifted from 2, 3, 4 handful living to 1 handful living, we don't regret anything. We don't regret anything. Apostle Paul was writing to Timothy, his protege, and Timothy was a young pastor. And Paul tells him kind of how to pastor the church, some of the most important things. And in that letter, he says this: command those who are rich in this present world. Command those who are rich in this present world. And just kind of put a pause on that. You may go, I'm off the hook, I'm not rich. Okay, if you drove here today, you're rich. Okay, by world standards, you are rich. If you're wondering, where do I want to go eat today and pay someone to make me food and clean up after me, you're rich, right? If you're thinking, where do I want to travel to in the next couple years, you're rich. Okay, so you're rich. you're rich. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant. So it doesn't say command those who are rich to not be wealthy, to despise money. It doesn't say that. It says command those who are rich in this present not to be arrogant. Don't be cocky about it, nor to put their hope in wealth. To put their hope in wealth. See, so back in the day, people would create carved idols, right? And worship them. It's the weirdest thing. They would actually look at material things that they carved out of wood or stone or metal, and they'd put their hope in that thing. Isn't that weird? That people would take an inanimate object and put their hope and their identity in that. And then God said, when you go through hard times, ask your idol for help. Why are you talking to me? So what he's saying is, don't put your hope in your wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Hear that. Enjoyment. Do you have a nice car? Enjoy it. Just don't let it own you. And if God says give it away, give it away. Enjoy the house, the condo, the apartment you live in, right? But if God says downsize, so you have more freedom financially to give to others, then do it, right? Follow God. Don't put your hope in your stuff. Then he says, command them to do good. Wait, it's not enough just to write checks? No. Some of us, growing up in a church where there was quite a few affluent people, there were quite a few people that would write checks so they wouldn't serve. Right? It's almost like they were club dues. It's like, no, I'm not going to volunteer. I give a check so someone else does that for me, right? And he says, no, do good. Not support good, which is important, but actually do good. And he says to be rich in good deeds and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of life that is truly life. This is one more of what matters, less of what doesn't. Life that is truly life. Look, here's the thing. I don't have any emotional stories about things I bought. I don't have emotional stories in general. Like, I'm not too emotional, but I really don't have emotional stories. Like, I don't have stories about, like, man, I remember forget the time I got my Z Cavariccis. And man, when I got my Michael Jackson zipper jacket, dude, I was weepy all day. I couldn't control myself, right? When I bought that bigger TV, I went from 55 to 65 inches. Went from LCD to OLED. Man, it was a mess. I don't have stories like that. I don't have emotional getting stories. I don't have any emotional keeping stories. Like, I don't have any stories about, like, I had this amount of money and I was going to give it to support the poor so that they could eat or have clothes. I was going to give it to people in need. I was going to give it to help spread the gospel, but then I thought, I'd rather have a good steak. Like, I don't stories like that are like, I'll never forget that moment. It was amazing. I don't have a story about, I got a new fridge. So I was like, what do I do with my old fridge? Should I give it to a single mom that doesn't have any fridge? Or should I put it in the garage and store, like, stuff that I should probably just throw away, right? And here's the thing. I fully support kimchi fridges, okay? So those of you guys that have kimchi, for the sake of your marriage, maybe it might be a good thing to have the stinky food in the garage, right? But I don't have a story about keeping things like that. Like, I don't get weepy about the jeans I should have thrown away 10 years ago. And every time I see them in the drawer, I'm like, worth it, right? But I'll tell you what, I have a lot of emotional giving stories. Lots. I remember the first time I tithed. I was 15 years old. And I'd just gone from selling things that the government wouldn't want me to sell, okay, and made a good chunk of change for a 15-year-old, to a lifestyle where I would have to work hourly and make $3.25 an hour. So I'd work like all Saturday and make like $20 and going, this is terrible. And then giving God 10% of that, $2 of that. But I remember we did this thing at the youth group, and they wanted to redo our youth room to reach more people. And all I knew was this: someone gave so I could be reached. And I'm gonna be darned if I don't give, because there's a bunch of friends I really cared about. And I want them to be reached too. I want them to have the life that I have. So I remember tithing and how much that changed my life. I remember selling our car. We're at a financially challenging season early in marriage. And we had this car. It was probably the most of anything that we had as a family. And I sold it on Craigslist because I tend to buy low and sell high and kind of to take care of our family. And so I locked it down. I was going to meet this person at the coffee shop in the northwest burbs of Chicago. And we're going to have this big check, and it's going to really help us financially. And I was driving up to the coffee shop and really felt God saying, give it to them for a third of the price. I was like, but we already agreed on a price, man. Like, he said yes. And this is not like I'm not fleecing him. They said, and I really felt strongly, God saying, just do it. Do it. Do you serve me, or do you own this, or you serve this car? And I remember walking up to the coffee shop going, hey, tell me your story, man. Because I didn't know him. It was just like texting. And he goes, I started going to this church, Willow Creek, church in the Midwest. And he goes, I started going to this church, started playing drums in the worship team. We just recently became Christians. And man, I really feel like God is supposed to ask us to get rid of a bunch of stuff and recalibrate our finances so we can give more. I was like, oh, cool. So I feel like I'm supposed to give you this car for this amount. And him and his wife just broke down in the coffee shop. I'll never forget that moment. I remember when we needed money as a church, because, it costs money to launch a church, significant amount of money. And I remember one church called us up and said, we're going to give you $10,000. That's crazy. And the other church called up, so they're going to give you $10,000. I remember when I was praying, going to a friend's family barbecue and in the church, and obviously before we launched, and I was just praying, God, we need a trailer. We need a trailer. It's a very specific kind of trailer we need. 5 seconds later, I kid you not, I was still in the car. One of my friends texted me, and he goes, do you guys need a trailer? It's like, yeah, but it needs to be this many feet, this style, this brand preferably, this tow rating. Goes, yeah, I got one of those. And he's like, if you can get it to you, you can have it. It's like, I'll figure it out. I remember being on a Facebook Live or raising funds for the church, and we needed to buy a truck. So we have this trailer now. We need a truck to pull the trailer because it takes a lot of guys to pull 11,000 pounds down the 5. So it's like we need to get a truck. And we were on Facebook Live just updating. Here's everything's going. We found a facility, and we need a truck. And one person just commented, an old friend from years before. He goes, I'll buy you a truck. I was like, hey, it's going to be about $10,000 to buy a truck. Like, we need one with, like, operational brakes and starts and all that kind of stuff. And he goes, yeah, $10,000 is fine. I was like, don't mess. Like, on the Facebook Live, I'm like, don't mess with me. And he goes, yeah, text me afterwards. So I text him afterwards. He goes, yeah, wired the money the next day, $10,000. And that's why we have a truck out there. I remember so many people that helped us plant this church. I remember as a church, we were able to pay it forward and give people food who didn't have food. One of my proudest moments for us as a church is when Tiff, our kids pastor, took the kids and they packed sandwiches during kids ministry. And then a bunch of the kids with adult supervision went to some areas in need here in the area and passed out lunches after church. When we give hope to the hopeless, when we walk alongside single parents and say, I can't imagine being 15 years old and having a kid and trying to go through high school. We're here. And the one less thing to worry about is diapers and food and formula or whatever. We want to come alongside you. If that means we have less stuff as a church, less of what doesn't matter, more of what does. I remember hearing stories that Nick and Heather, our missionaries in Thailand, would tell us about this, this person's name and this person's name. These kids, single-digit age kids, rescued out of human trafficking, servicing clients dozens of times a day, rescued out of that, leading them to the Lord, rehabbing them, giving them a skill set, and seeing the joy on these kids' faces now. And at some point, we'll take a trip over there so you can meet some of the kids that you guys have impacted. You guys have. When I'm old, I told this, I'm like, how much will we have given over the course of our lives if we, God willing, we live to be 70, 80 plus years old? It'll be hundreds of thousands of dollars that our family has been able to give away. It's amazing what you can do over decades, And I think when I'm old in that moment and think about the hundreds of thousands of dollars we've been able to give away to introduce people to Jesus, to find salvation, to find hope, to transform marriages, people finding life that is truly life in Jesus' words, I don't think I'll feel like I missed out on anything. I think in those moments on my deathbed, I won't go, but I could have bought in that neighborhood. I just don't think it'll matter. I could have bought this bag instead of that bag. So, a couple questions. Are you accumulating on earth what you cannot keep? Are you accumulating on earth what you cannot keep? Or are you investing in heaven what you cannot lose? Are you accumulating on earth what you cannot keep? Or are you investing in heaven what you cannot use or lose? So throw out, get rid of some stuff. 2, buy less. And 3, give more. Why? Because your life is too valuable. Your God is too good to waste your life, your one and only life, on things that do not last. If the worst team wants to come up, last thoughts. Instead of having 2 hands, better to have 1 with peace and joy than 2 with anxiety and stress and tension and a chasing after the wind. But here's what's cool. When you have 1 hand, you have a free hand. You have a free hand to help someone up. When you have 1 hand, you have a free hand to help and give to people. When you have a 1 hand living, you have a free hand to put your arm around someone and encourage them. When you live with 1 hand, you have an extra hand to worship God. It's better to have 1 handful with joy and peace than 2 with a chasing after the wind. Less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. Look, no guilt for being blessed, but not allowing our blessings to turn into pride. Being faithful stewards of what God gives us. And there's this idea that we're going to end with in the Old Testament. He says that I want to bless you, not so you can create bigger barns to store all your stuff. He says I want to bless you to be a what? Blessing. I want to bless you to be a blessing. So, let us be people in a season that is full of accumulation. Let's follow the lead of a God that gave. This isn't a season where God grabbed more stuff. This is a season where God emptied himself out to give. This is what we celebrate. So could we be a church that blesses other people? Wherever you go, every holiday party you go to, every situation you go to in this holiday season, be asking yourself, how can I bless? Be on the lookout for greed creeping in, but for opportunities to bless people. This is far bigger than an offering at church. This is not the whole point of this. The point wasn't so that you give more in an offering. The point was that we bless more wherever we go. Less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. Let me pray for us. God, I just pray that our lives wouldn't be consumed with stuff, that we would have stuff, but the stuff wouldn't have us. God, I pray that when people see us as Christians, I pray that the adjectives they would think about would be things that would describe you. God, I pray they would see your joy and your hope. I pray that as we accumulate things in our lives, we don't have the stress and anxiety and the toiling and the chasing after the wind that comes with it. Would we be one-handed lives kind of people? So we have plenty of margin to help others, to give, to bless, to worship you. God, we give you our hearts. This season, would you have space? Would you have room in our hearts? We don't want to crowd you out. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Would you stand? Let's sing this last song together.